This meeting of the Tyler ISD Board of Trustees is called to order. The presence of a quorum has been established and the meeting has been duly called and the notice of the meeting has been posted in the time and manner required. Thank you all for coming out today. I'm using this mic so it is captured digitally, for everybody watching at home. Are we going to slide into executive session first, or Dr. Crawford? Okay, we're going to have a quick executive session and we'll be back. Thank you. Okay, we're reconvening from executive session now, and we do have some action to follow. We have 4 principles that we need to place, and let's go ahead and take these one at a time forward, just in case any of them are here and might want to say a few words. So the first one we have is for Hubbard Middle School. Dr. Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Washman. It's our pleasure to bring to y'all, in front of y'all, a gentleman named Mr. Todd Dreifert. He's currently principal at Chaparral High School in Scottsdale, Arizona. His recommendation is, for consideration, is for principal at Hubbard Middle School. Many years of principal experience. He and his wife are wanting to get closer to home. If getting closer to Kansas and Mississippi is Tyler, Texas from Arizona, that's a pretty good goal. But this is a pretty good place. Mr. Dreifert has been in conversation with us over the last year about opportunities here in Tyler, Texas. He is not here today, but we're excited about recommending him at Hubbard Middle School to follow up Mr. Sherman, who just moved to Legacy.
Okay, good deal. Do I have a motion on that item?
President Washington, I move that we approve the administration's recommendation of Todd Dreifert for the new principal at Hubbard Middle School.
Thank you, Mr. Burkeville. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries, and can't wait to meet Mr. Dreifert and see what he can do, continue on the legacy at Hubbard that's been built.
One thing is, he won't be here until July. I think that they actually wrap up their school year in 2 weeks. Are we glad that we are already done? So we might can schedule some type of Zoom meeting with them as far as get people to know him, but certainly when he gets here, we'll have him introduced.
Okay, thank you. Now we're moving on to Orr Elementary.
Thank you, Mr. Washman. Ms. Lauren Smith here today with her husband as well, also an assistant principal. Ms. Smith is currently an academic dean at Tyler High School. The recommendation is for her to go to Orr. We're excited about her. That's after she came through the Tyler Ready Principal Program. It's time for her to get a shot at her own campus. We're excited about her being recommended for Orr Elementary School, Orr Elementary School.
Don't start your rumors, man. Okay. Well, good deal. I will go ahead and entertain a motion on that item.
I move that we accept Lauren Smith as the new principal of Orr Elementary.
Great. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Guys have it, and the motion carries. Mrs. Smith, are you here today? There you are. Go ahead and come up to the microphone if you want to say a couple words.
Well, good morning to President Washman, the Board Trustee, and Superintendent Dr. Crawford. I'm extremely honored to have the opportunity to serve and lead Orr Elementary. As a graduate of Tyler ISD and a daughter of an educator and coach, I know firsthand the commitment and life-changing impact and excellent educational experience can bring to children. Here with me today, I have my amazing husband, Michael Smith, my beautiful mom, Deborah Alexander, who is also a Tyler ISD retired teacher. Both of them provide measurable support in addition to my own wonderful children, Michael and Joshua, who are also Tyler ISD students. I am ecstatic about the impact I will make at Orr Elementary and can't wait to provide an excellent education for our students. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith. We're excited to see what you can do over there at Orr. Okay, moving on. We have Owens Elementary.
Tell you what, we have husband and wife teams all over the district in our administration. We love that. And Mr. Brown's here with his wife, Angelica Brown. Ms. Brown is currently an assistant principal at Jones Elementary School, serving with, recommending her for Ramey Elementary School. She's currently an assistant principal at Jones Elementary School. Excited about Ms. Brown being recommended to this board. It looks good at Jones right now. Ms. Crane, you've done a good job over there. Y'all been a great team over there. And we're excited about the turnaround you're having at Jones. And we certainly are proud of this recommendation for Ms. Brown to go to Ramey Elementary School. Ms. Brown?
We'll go ahead and take a motion for it. You can stay up there. Don't expect any surprise. Okay, so this is for Ramey Elementary. I said Owens before. This is Ramey. So do I have a motion on this particular item?
I move that we excitedly accept the recommendation of Angelica Brown to Ramey Elementary School.
Great. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Guys have it, and the motion carries. Go ahead and come on up now. Mrs. Brown for Ramey Elementary.
I'm fairly excited too. I had to look back though when he said, oh, I didn't have the right speech. First, thank you, President Washman, Dr. Crawford, and the Board of Trustees for this great opportunity. I also want to thank my amazing family and my husband, Jay, for being my support system. He's truly my rock. Thank you, Dr. Crane, for being my mentor. I'm looking forward to serving Tyler ISD and Ramey Elementary in this new capacity. I'm honored to work with the Ramey teachers, staff, students, parents, and community partners to ensure successful student outcomes and by honoring the Ramey way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Brown. I'm going on the order of the agenda, and it's a little out of order compared to what we have in front of us. So my apologies for confusing anybody there. So now we will move on to Owens Elementary School.
Very good. Due to Ms. Sherman's promotion to become the new principal at Three Lakes Middle School, we have a vacancy at Owens. We're excited to present Mr. Weldon Davis, an East Texas guy from Henderson, Texas, as the recommendation for principal. Mr. Davis could not be here today. He had a flight that was prearranged at this time and could not get out of that and get back any earlier without costing him a considerable amount of money. We appreciate him disclosing that information. If approved, he will be able to meet staff and community, I believe, this week as well. So there's no pressure on that for the board. But it comes from North Mesquite High School, where he was an assistant principal in Mesquite ISD. Prior to that, he was a teacher in Mesquite ISD. I think the community and this board are going to find pleasure in Mr. Davis becoming one of our principal leaders in Tyler ISD.
Great, thank you. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion on the principal for Owens Elementary.
I move that we approve the administration's recommendation of Weldon Davis to be the new principal at Owens Elementary.
Thank you, Mr. Burkeville. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Guys have it, and the motion carries, and we now have a new principal at Owens Elementary School, Weldon Davis. So, thank you everybody for coming out today. We do have public participation. I don't know if anybody has signed up. Okay, so nobody signed up for public participation. So we'll move on down the agenda and consider approval for middle school attendance zones, which has to do with bond that we just passed. Sure.
Thank you. Certainly proud of our staff who were able to work on those principal selections. We start that process back in March, so this is not just a thing that we just go through. I just want to touch base back on that. This is an annual thing where we always try to get better at campuses. Sometimes there's resignations, sometimes there's retirements. So thank you, staff, for making sure that we got to where we are today. And everybody that's in here, talking about our chief school officers and our assistant superintendents and our HR people. Here we are today talking about the redrawing of attendance zones for Hall Middle School. into Hubbard, Bolter, Moore, and Three Lakes. This culminates something we've been talking about since February, actually January, I believe. I had 70 plus presentations in the community in regard to the consideration of the May 7th bond election to go to a 4-quadrant middle school concept. During those presentations, it became evident by questions in the community asking when these middle school attendance zones were going to be presented to the board and possibly considered for what could happen in the future. When we started delving into it administratively, we certainly had concerns about, starting this year's 6th grade at a school that could potentially be actually closed. In fact, this year's 6th and 7th grade to when the new Hubbard school could open, and how would you transfer them over at that time? Along with this year's 4th and 5th graders, actually next year's 5th and 6th graders, as they were transitioning into their middle school years as well. One thing we did say during the entire presentation to the community about the hog attendance zone was, it's not like we're redrawing this to where these students are brand new to Tyler ISD and we don't know where they're coming from. These students actually spend their K through 5 years, sometimes their pre-K through 5 years, with their peers that already go to the elementary attendance zones that feed into Hall. So you start thinking about Bell, you start thinking about Austin, you start thinking about Bonner, you start thinking about Annie Wood, you start thinking about maybe a little sliver of Rice down there, the old Birdwell feeder pattern, which is now a magnet. They all attend school with their peers of wherever they're being assigned. So I don't think this is anything that's just out of the ordinary. Not to mention the fact the district has gone through this exercise pre and post desegregation order. Whenever we had to get the federal government's permission pre-desegregation order being lifted, to where we actually reassigned students from the old A.T. Stewart Middle School either into Hogg or to Three Lakes, and maybe even some to Bolter. The other thing that we did most recently, because we'd struggled for many years, oh, by the way, that Dogan Middle School did actually get out of state required or state improvement required status the year that they actually were moved into the Moore feeder pattern. We did this same action as far as Dogan and the Moore. If you're concerned about faculty and staff, our HR department has already been working on actually landing them at new campuses as well. Those are spread throughout the district as well. We've actually talked with the Hogg faculty as well about this coming up. So what we've got in front of the board today is consideration of the redrawing of of our middle school attendance zones. Again, our middle school attendance zones, not the high school attendance zones. Mr. Brown's an old coach. You know that gets controversial around here because they think that we're carving out certain neighborhoods to go to one high school or the other to win a state championship. We also know that we haven't done that since 2004 and 1994, so we must not be very good at it if that's our scheme. We are doing middle school attendance zones, this last action of actually doing that. So I'm going to have Mr. Loper, I'm going to give you a brief description here in regard to that. We've worked with our demographers at PASA. Y'all know PASA, they came in last October, I think, and gave us an update on our demographic study before we actually called the bond. And they actually did our work for us this time using the GIS coding to see where kids are living. We've also looked at other data as well. So Mr. Loper, if you'll go ahead and kind of take us through that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Crawford. And Joseph, I'm going to give a brief description on this map, and then we'll flip over to the actual redrawn map. But what you're looking at right now is currently the current attendance zones. And as you can see, I'm not very good at deer hunting, but kind of shaking the scope. But Pallet Street is, like he said, we're not going to change the high school zones, which is Front Street, so everything Front Street will be divided between, there you go, Dr. Carter, will be divided between Moore and Bolter. So Pallet Street will be our demarcation line going straight north and south there. Where his pointer is, and everything pink to the left of that will go to Bolter, and everything right to that will go to Moore. And then when you get down to Hubbard, everything, and then you come straight down 155 to Sunnybrook, right there, that curve, Dr. Crawford, and you're going to come across. That section will go to Three Lakes, and everything else will go north. So if you'd flip to the Hubbard, I'm sorry. Oh, you're right. So that's what it will look like once this is approved. And just to give you an idea, the Hogg Middle School zone has 450 students, middle school students that are actually geocoded and live in that attendance zone. Only 250 of them go to Hogg. So it's 250 actually go to Hogg, and these 200 students are already going somewhere else. So these numbers I want to give you, it's really not going to affect them. They may already be going to Hubbard, they may already be going to Boulder, they may already be going to Three Lakes.
So those other 200, that's just Howard ISD students, that's not private school students. We don't have any way of kind of,
No.
the other 200 is Howard ISD students.
That's correct. Yes, they are actually transferring out from Hogg. So what that leaves us with, and you may ask, so okay, well, how many students is that going to be? So that's 53 with this change that will go to Boulder. That's 193 that will go to Hubbard. 117 will go to Moore, and then 91 will go to Three Lakes. Looking at the capacity of these schools, I know you probably want to know, we do have the capacity. We actually, according to our demographers, even into the future, all the way to 2030, we have very good capacity for all of these schools. Once we have, I think they said we have about 4,000 students in 2030. We will have a capacity of 4,800 in 2030. So, Dr. Crawford, that's the description of the zone.
Yeah, and we did take into consideration elementary feeders that actually feed into these schools. We tried not to split elementary schools. Now there is some. Bell's zone already gets sliced in half with 5th Street. There's just no way to make that an up or down area. So we still have kiddos that some will go to Hubbard, some will go to Moore. You can't get around that in an urban environment like we've got. Same thing here, this sliver of Three Lakes, we really didn't intend on that happening, but we also didn't intend on, having, 200 kids go to Hubbard right away. So we did need to have that happen. This little sliver right here is actually a Pete sliver. These Pete kids already go to Three Lakes as well. So we did not, and it's not very many kiddos in regard to that. So we're comfortable being able to make that happen as well. It's interesting, we talk about where kids live and where they're actually going to school. One thing we pride ourselves about in Tyler ISD is choice, whether it be going to Caldwell or whether it be going to Birdwell or whether it be going to the MST magnet portion of Moore. But we also have the straight transfers out of that zone to Three Lakes, to Hubbard, to Boulder, and Moore as well. So that is something that we just have to contend with. If we're going to have choice and you're not going to be just blocked in no matter what into your attendance zone, that is something that we have to contend with. That's why you don't have that. That's why you have 450 kids that actually live in the Hogg zone, but only 250 kids actually attend school there. And they're all over. They're not just going to the Arts Magnet. They're not just going to the MST Moore Magnet. They're actually going to the other comprehensive middle schools as well. So kudos to the district for having that choice concept whenever there's so much rhetoric out there about school choice. We've got school choice in Tyler ISD.
So the 193 going to Hubbard, or projected going to Hubbard, some of them already go to Hubbard.
That's very possible.
And same with Moore, 117 and more, some of them probably are transferred.
That's correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we know how many of those?
I do not have that information with me today.
We've studied it, but as far as having that on the tip of my tongue, no. Because that's,
Well, the reason I asked the question was to Hubbard. We're trying to, we're gonna demolish that, and can it hold 193 students if we don't know exactly how many there are now versus will be coming? That was my concern.
Yeah, they're,
is Dr. Davis here today? Do you remember off the top of your head? The actual number from Hogg going over, we know how many kids live in the Hogg attendance zone, but how many of those kids actually already live in the Hogg attendance zone that are going to Hubbard? Okay. When we studied it, we just don't have that number available for us right now. Okay.
I can tell you this, I know how many are leaving Hubbard. So, according to our transfer data, you do have, with Hubbard having a capacity of 976 that are actually zoned in that Hubbard, we have a net 137 that transfer out of Hubbard zone.
And right now, Hubbard only has what, 7?
Around 839.
Yeah.
And the eighth.
That's the net, that's figuring the decrease.
So even with the 193, which really all of those aren't going to Hubbard because some aren't there, we're
Sure.
still under capacity.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing we study here.
Right.
Because at one point, we thought everybody's going to go to Hubbard.
Right.
That lives below Front Street. And that's why we went ahead and sliced off a little bit of Three Lakes to not tip us over what we were comfortable in having at Hubbard.
Yeah, that would have put us over 300.
Right, and so that's why we were able to go to Three Lakes that had a little bit of headroom in there, enough headroom to take on the amount they're going to take on, and the same thing for Hubbard.
And if Hubbard will be, the new school will be completed in how many years?
2 years.
Actually, well,
Could be Christmas of 23.
yeah, it could be.
Okay.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Anybody else have any questions about these zones? Anything pertaining there too? Comments? Okay.
Motion to approve middle school attendance.
We have a motion to approve the new attendance zones. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Guys have it, motion carries. I'm excited about getting every kid in Tyler ISD into a safe and secure facility. And I think this is part of that. Hogg, as endearing as it is so antiquated. And I look forward to maintaining its historical integrity and still using it, but getting those kids in that zone into what will be a really, really nice facility, just like the rest of Tyler ISD. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits on that, Mr. Washman. Certainly safety and security is at the top of our mind every day, but certainly within the last week or so, it's been a conversation for a lot of us. The Hubbard campus did get some touch-ups and some secure upgrades from the 2013 bond. And so the current building as it is, even though it's not up to the same standards as our other 2013 middle schools, we do have things in place to be able to make that a secure facility. Hogg, we added that actually back in 2015, I think. That didn't get much, but on the back side of it, it's pretty exposed. We've got security there, so we've been able to cover that the last few years. Certainly the new building with the modernization will be exciting as well. There's some other benefits as well of this move. If you look at PEMS data, the student-to-teacher ratio at Hogg, because we were trying to do everything we possibly can to give them as much of a normal experience as possible, but them operating at nearly a third to 4 times as small as our other programs, the student-to-teacher ratio there was about 8 to 1 in many cases. We try to land anywhere from 15 to 20 to 1 across the school district obviously 22-1 to elementary schools, but when you start putting in all of that. So in saying that, it is a budgetary move that provides us some efficiency so that we can accomplish some of our budgetary goals. Safety and security being one of them, with some adjustments we're making there, and then obviously staff compensation that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. That is something that's extremely valuable to us too, about being able to make some of these more efficient moves. We've seen that over time as we've done some of this consolidation. That was one thing that came up during our conversation. Why don't y'all think about consolidating one of these campuses? I said, well, that's what this is. This is a consolidation. We start talking about Hubbard being rebuilt. You're going to be able to absorb that attendance zone and actually do that. So there are other benefits besides just getting into a new building that I think is a win-win. Is it I don't want to call it uncomfortable, but is it hard to do because you've been in this building for 92 years as a middle school? Absolutely. There is tradition. But as we know, tradition will get you beaten. If you continue to do the same things over and over and over, you can wind up putting yourself in a predicament either academically, accountability-wise, or financially if you don't make these moves and these adjustments. So thank y'all for giving us the opportunity to pull this off. And we are certainly looking forward to Hubbard Middle School getting a new building as well.
Good deal. And this also makes it to where each high school has 2 true feeders going to 2 true feeders. That's exactly right. So that's good. Okay. Well, you had a pretty good segue as far as compensation structure. And talking about that, because it's the next item on the agenda, there's an item to consider approval of compensation structure for 2022 and 2023.
So Ms. Bjork's going to come up to the podium here. She's coming up here. We are finally where we wanted to be. We wanted to get to 50,000 as quickly as we possibly could. It's going to create some maneuvering that we've got to do now. We're excited about being able to present to y'all that our starting teacher salary will be at $50K. But there's some other cool things that are going to happen in support staff compensation as well. We'll turn it over to our CFO, Ms. Bjork.
Okay, good morning. We are excited to announce that we think we can budget $50,000 for beginning salary for teachers, which should put us at the top right now until we announce, and then maybe Longview will pop up. Because they're at $49,500, but $50,000 is the top right now. And we are proposing manual trades and clerical from about $10 an hour to $12 minimum. And we're also moving the pay grade ranges on hourly employees anywhere from 10 to 20%, the bottom, so that the hourly rates will rise across on all pay grades. And that's fairly expensive. It's about $1.4 million, but it's time we do it because we're having trouble staffing some of those areas. And the teacher pay is around $1.5 million to raise that, and then you have to bump up each level. And on the second page of the next page of the agenda, it basically shows what raise based on years of service the teachers will get. And we cap at $70,000. We don't have very many teachers that have over 40 years, but we do cap at $70,000. But if we do like a retention stipend or something like that, they can have that. But then the administrative and professional, we did 2% of the midpoint. And we also raised the min and the max on that pay scale 2%, because we were kind of low. And anytime you raise the teacher pay, you have to raise the admin pay, because sometimes the teachers promote like to master teacher or some other job. And so you have to keep that pay grade consistent with what you're doing with teachers. The annualized hourly, which are clerical and manual trades, we're doing 3% midpoint. It'll be either the greater 3% or raising them up to the new minimum of their pay grade. Some of them will see substantial raises. And then bus drivers and mechanics, because we did a very large adjustment for them last year, we're doing 2% of midpoint, and we raised the base on them 2%. So the new minimum for bus drivers will be now $18.36. And just the bottom just shows what we did on the pay grades. The admin, the 2%, that's around $500,000. So it's a little over $3 million to do all this.
Bus drivers mechanics board, for y'all increasing in the last few years, we actually finished the year fairly staffed. When we've been hurting, and a lot of other school districts have been hurting for bus drivers. So we're hoping that the community will take notice of this little bump and increase in our hourly wages, and will want to come serve the kiddos of Tyler and take care of our buildings. And then those that are already here, hopefully they'll be inspired to do an even better job in taking care of our facilities.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody on board have any comments or questions regarding these increases?
So you cap the teachers after 40 years, you cap administrators after 40 years?
The administrators are capped at their, whatever the maximum of the pay grade is. We don't have any of that really, that get up to the maximum of their pay grade. But if they get there,
I think if we even got
I don't know that we do.
I think what it'd be like for me to work that long.
So question regarding the increases, 1 to 5 year, you got $1,500. Is that's not an automatic increase, that's a max increase or what?
No, if they have 1 to 5 years, they'll get a $1,500 increase.
When they get to 5 year?
No.
Well, if they have 1, 2, 3, or 4 for 5 years, that's what they get.
Okay, they'll get the $1,500 each year.
Because we had to make
Okay.
the pay grades up.
Okay, good.
We had to step them all up.
The another question in regards to the midpoint, I'm not sure what the midpoint is. I'm kind of curious on that.
Okay, like for example, if we have on our hourly now it'll be $12, and say the maximum is 20, you split the difference.
Okay.
That's the midpoint. And so if you're under that midpoint, you get more than a 3% raise. If you're over it, you get less than a 3%. That's standard with how most schools do it this way.
Okay. And these raises are automatic?
If they're automatic, if they're in good, if the employee's in good standing.
There are provisions that if you've gone through the appraisal process and you didn't score a certain score on the appraisal, you may not be eligible for a raise, and that has happened.
Or if you're hired late in the year, you will get bumped up to the new min. That's one of the other provisions we have.
So I agree with Ms. Adams about the caps. You know, I like caps in particular because some people may stay 40 years, and that's a good incentive, I guess. But when they get there, will they get cost of living raises, so they'll just stay there permanently? Because we've had some people that were 39 years in the district, and some that were over 40, I think, in the retirement process. So would they stay there without any increase at all?
There were some that did last year, but again, we did a retention stipend and they did get that. And we hope to do that again.
Okay. They don't get cost of living raises?
No, I mean, no.
Right, okay. Just want to make sure.
Okay. How many years in a row have we given raises? 9 years in a row. We like giving raises. I'm glad to support the teachers, and I'm glad that we always find a way. And thank you, Mrs. Bjork, for making that happen. And I'll go ahead and entertain them before I do that.
Can I make a comment?
We
live on a fixed revenue from the state of Texas per formula. So it's getting more and more difficult every year to be able to pull this off. So I want to say that publicly, that my plea to the legislature is always take care of our educators and making sure we're doing that. But let's take, for instance, that Garland ISD and Houston ISD announced that their starting salaries are at $60,000 a year. Well, the formulas are built in that the cost of living to live in the Metroplex versus Tyler, Texas is different. And there's no doubt about that. Now, sometimes we get used to living in Tyler, Texas and say, well, it's not any different. It is different. And so in saying that, we have to understand that when we're presenting this publicly, that these are not an easy thing to go by every year, and that we have these tremendous discussions about chewing our fingernails off about whether or not we're going to be able to pull this off. So I'm always going to give this warning when we talk about these compensation structures. It's not always just go cut more administration. When your first rating says that you're already living within your means administratively, there's not a whole lot more of administration to cut. And it's not just talking about the superintendent or talking about HR. We're talking about, it's a pretty complex, comprehensive project that we go through every year, and you can only live within the revenue that's given to you. And so in saying that, I'm just making a public declaration so that we all understand that if we're disappointed we're not given competing with Garland, well, they're funded differently than good old Tyler, Texas. And that sometimes is a shame, and sometimes it isn't, because you have to live in the Metroplex to actually be eligible to get that kind of compensation, and maybe we don't want to live in the Metroplex. So there's a give and take on that as well, along with the price of a gallon of milk in Tyler compared to, say, Mesquite or Garland. So just, I want everyone to understand we're not funded the same, just as, Tenaha is not funded the same as Tyler. If you start talking about East Texas, there are districts that, even Lindale, I believe, is $4,000 to $5,000 below what our starting structure is, I believe, Tasha. And so it is pretty relative to where you live, I understand that. But again, I think you have the comparisons, and we're right in the middle as far as East Texas goes of comparison being able to compete.
Comment. I'd like to say, I hope the teachers are appreciative of the sacrifice that the district's making to increase their salaries and the amount of work that's gone into it.
Sure.
I think hopefully it will help to retain some of our teachers within the TISD, because we've had some good teachers that have chosen to leave for one reason or another. So I'm definitely supportive of this in that aspect.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion on this item. I'd make it if I could.
I move that we approve the administration's recommendations on compensation structure for 2022-2023.
Thank you, Mr. Burkeville. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Atkins. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. And that's exciting news. Tyler, Texas is a great place to live. It's a great place to work, and we want to make Tyler ISD a great place to continue to work. And
It is, and it's a great place to be a taxpayer that provides this. We'll have some other news for you as far as the tax rate goes. In the future, if you're trying to get me to shush, I'll give you a little hors d'oeuvre on that. You're looking at a double-digit compression probably on your tax rate. So M&O and INS combined.
yes.
So, and we were able to pull this off at the same time.
Well, the community of Tyler has supported us in most every time. I know since I've been on the board, we've asked them for help and their blessing as far as bonds go. And I do look forward to being a part of the board that thanks them, now that we're done asking for money, thanks them by lowering the tax rate when we can. Okay, that being said, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for adjournment. Are we going back into executive session?
We'll come out after executive session.
Okay.
No action anticipated.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and go into executive session and we'll adjourn afterwards. Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Okay.